The wind scraped through the narrow streets of downtown Philadelphia, tugging at the frayed edges of a red military beret that had long lost its stiffness. Arthur Wells stood outside the glass doors of a luxury tech showroom, Tesla Experience Center, his posture still dignified, though his frame had thinned and hunched with time. He wasn't there to buy. He didn't even go inside. He just stood across the street, watching. Passers-by didn't notice him, or if they did, they looked away quickly, embarrassed or inconvenienced by his presence. An old man in a threadbare coat, standing too still, too straight for someone in his condition. Inside the brightly lit showroom, an employee was laughing with a young couple, gesturing proudly at a gleaming electric SUV on the wall behind them. A massive screen played a looping video of Elon Musk, smiling in front of a rocket. Words appeared beneath him in bold, all-caps font. "The future belongs to the brave." Arthur's lips twitched, not quite a smile, something tighter, sadder. He adjusted the grip on the cane in his left hand and turned to leave. His shoes made no sound as they pressed against the wet sidewalk. Years earlier, London, 1983, a sea of scarlet coats, black bearskin helmets aligned in perfect symmetry. Arthur stood motionless outside Buckingham Palace, 26 years old, tall, broad, the epitome of composure, a member of Her Majesty's Coldstream Guards. He had learned the art of standing still, of dignity under pressure, of protecting what others took for granted. He'd guarded royalty, met prime ministers, saluted foreign dignitaries with the solemn grace of a man who knew honor not as ceremony, but as duty. His mother called him her lion in red. She passed from breast cancer the following year. He hadn't cried at the funeral, not then, not until the uniform came off years later, and he realized the only part of himself he still believed in was tied to those days he could no longer return to. Philadelphia now. After emigrating in the mid-2000s with his wife, an American nurse he'd met during a NATO assignment in Germany, Arthur had tried to start anew, but after she passed, suddenly stroke. While gardening and with no children, the loneliness overtook him. His accent, once charming, became a barrier in job interviews. The straight-backed pride read as coldness when his arthritis worsened and the pension he received was misclassified during immigration red tape. His decline became swift. Now he lived in the shell of a closed-up mechanics shop, using an abandoned office chair as a bed and the single remaining window as his only source of warmth in daylight. One afternoon, he tried to speak with a young woman at the public library, asked her how to access a computer terminal so he could check the status of an appeal he'd filed for his benefits. She rolled her eyes, pulled out a set of AirPods. "Ask someone who works here," she muttered. He did. The clerk behind the desk never looked up from. "A phone online only." She said, "I'm here." He replied quietly, "Exactly, online only." The bureaucracy was worse. Forms needed to be printed, then scanned and emailed. Impossible with no printer, no scanner, no address. When he explained this to the Veterans Affairs liaison, she blinked at him, expression blank. "Sir, it says here you're not a U.S. veteran. Your case was filed improperly. I served under NATO. I was wounded during a joint op in Bosnia. Sir, again, not an American veteran." Arthur's mouth opened slightly, then closed. It happened on a Tuesday. He was in Rittenhouse Square waiting for the soup truck that came at 3:30 sharp. A little girl dropped her stuffed rabbit near his feet as she passed. He bent to pick it up, but the mother screamed, "Don't touch her," and pulled the child away as if he were diseased. A bystander filmed it. The caption read, "Creepy homeless guy grabs kid in park." It racked up 200,000 views in 24 hours. The police arrived before he'd finished explaining. They cuffed him hard, too hard for someone with his condition. He didn't resist. At the station, he sat for 4 hours while the footage was reviewed. No charges filed, no apology offered. One officer muttered as he walked away, "Should have stayed in your own damn country." That night, back under the skeleton roof of the mechanics shop, Arthur finally opened the small wooden box he kept buried under a tarp. Inside, a folded newspaper clipping of his guard duty, his photo on the front page, Buckingham Palace in the background, his wife's hospital badge. A thank you letter from a former sergeant in the Royal Army, written in 1996, a copy of the Times with a photo of Elon Musk at the Royal Institution, shaking hands with Prince William. Musk had visited the UK for a SpaceX collaboration. Arthur remembered watching that same man from a distance years earlier. Musk had walked past him outside Clarence House. Arthur had saluted. Musk had nodded. Now he lived in the country. Musk called the land of infinite opportunity. The irony wasn't lost on him. Final scene. Part-eyed, a group of teens found him 2 nights later. They'd seen the viral clip. One of them had it on his phone. "Hey, it's the pedo from the park," one said. Arthur didn't respond. They circled him, kicked over his cane. When he fell, one of them laughed, but not cruelly. Just casually, like it didn't mean anything. They ran off. One stayed behind just a moment longer and looked at Arthur. "What's your deal, man?" Arthur, lying on the ground, tried to speak, but nothing came. The cold reached through his coat. The teen left. Arthur lay there, watching the sky. Somewhere far away, a jet streaked across the stars, white, silent, bright. He didn't move, not yet, not until he was ready. It took Arthur nearly 20 minutes to get back on his feet that night. He did it alone, with shaking hands and bloodied knuckles from the pavement. The cane had snapped. He left it behind. The bruises faded, mostly. The pain in his ribs didn't. Something had cracked, but he wouldn't know for sure. He hadn't been to a doctor in over 2 years. For 3 days, he didn't leave the garage. He didn't eat. Didn't try to find food, just sat in the corner with his coat pulled tight around his knees, his wife's ID badge pressed to his chest. Outside, the city carried on. Sirens, laughter, street musicians, traffic, an orchestra of indifference. That would have been the end. Quiet, unspectacular. Just another old man gone. But the universe, or chance, or something harder to name, had other plans. It started with a knock. Not the police, not kids. A clean, firm knock, like someone who expected an answer. Arthur opened the door slowly. A woman stood there in a grey wool coat, a breath clouding in the morning chill. She looked out of place among the cracked concrete and rusting signage. "Are you Mr. Arthur Wells?" His first thought was bureaucracy. His second, debt collector. He almost closed the door. "I'm with the Elon Musk Foundation," she said quickly. "We received a flagged message from our internal AI ethics team, a review of footage involving a mistaken arrest and a man with prior NATO service improperly flagged by public safety systems." Arthur blinked. The woman shifted, hesitant. "There was a video. We ran facial recognition. Your name came up. Your face was in our archives. We were able to connect it to an old military file and, well, Mr. Musk asked that someone check." He stared at her, unspeaking. The silence grew heavy. "I know how strange this must sound," she added, "but we'd like to help, not charity. Not a handout. Dignity, you deserve that." He nearly closed the door again. Not from anger, from shame. They moved fast. A hotel room was arranged. Then a medical evaluation, 3 cracked ribs, early-stage kidney disease, malnutrition. A psychologist on retainer flew in from New York. They tried to ask him questions. He answered few, but one night, watching the lights of the city flicker from behind the thick hotel curtains, he muttered, "I used to stand in front of Queens." People applauded. Now they turned their heads. The psychologist said nothing. "I didn't change," he said. The world did. Then came the phone call. Arthur was invited, not publicly, not ceremonially, to a private meeting. Elon Musk had read the brief. The same man Arthur had saluted once decades ago in London now wanted to speak with him. No cameras, no tweets. Just 2 men in a quiet office overlooking a launch pad. Arthur arrived in silence. He wore a pressed shirt, jacket, and the red beret he had kept all those years. Musk stood when he entered. "They tell me you stood still for 3 hours in the rain once without blinking." Arthur's mouth twitched. 4, actually. Musk smiled. "You still can. Not for the reasons I used to." There was a pause. Not awkward, respectful. "I want to offer you a position," Musk said, advisory. "Ethics and human dignity. How I handles forgotten people. We need perspective that can't be coded." Arthur looked at him long and hard. "You think I can be useful?" "I know you can." The program was small at first. Then it grew. Arthur's job wasn't glamorous. He sat in quiet meetings, reviewed language in policy drafts, advocated for systems to detect when government and tech databases failed to see people as people. He fought for flags, second reviews, human contact points. He never spoke to the press, but the systems changed quietly. Lines of code began checking for homelessness history before automated denials. Facial recognition began cross-referencing immigration files more thoroughly. Flags on veterans. All veterans were routed to a human. His photo, the one from outside Buckingham Palace, now hung in the ethics wing of the foundation. No plaque, no name, just the image of a young man in red, standing perfectly still, the final scene. Years later, Arthur sat on a bench in the very same Rittenhouse Square where the worst night had begun. A girl ran past, dropped a stuffed rabbit. He stood slowly, carefully, and picked it up. This time, the mother smiled. "Thank you, sir." He handed the toy over, nodded once, and returned to the bench. The sun filtered through the leaves. Children laughed. Somewhere, a Tesla rolled by silently, barely noticed. Arthur sat still, watching the world. He didn't ask for recognition. He didn't want apology. But for the first time in years, he felt seen, and that finally was enough.